Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Cooley. I'm the Director of Targeted Outreach at the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation. I'm going to give everyone another 1 minute to get logged in. I know everyone, it's kind of late afternoon. Some people might be getting in from lunch, leaving for lunch. So let's be patient for 1 more minute while we give people a little more time to get logged onto the webinar. Thank you for your patience. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Hi and welcome everyone. My name is Cooley. I am the Targeted Outreach Director for the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation. Again, welcome to our student loan workshop webinar. I want to say a big special thank you to Senator Monique Limón, Senator Dave Min, Assemblymember Cottie Petrie-Norris, and Assemblymember Chris Ward for helping us put this thing together. First, I'd like to introduce our panelists who will be doing the presentation and also answering some of your questions. Again, my name is Cooley. I'd like to pass it off to the DFPI's student loan ombudsperson, Selena.
Thank you, Koo. Good afternoon, everyone, for joining us. My name is Selena Damian, and I am the DFPI's Student Loan Servicing Ombudsperson. It is a pleasure to be here today with everyone. Samantha.
Hi, thanks everyone. Samantha Sang, the Legislative Director and Policy Advisor at NextGen Policy. We're a nonprofit advocacy group here in Sacramento, among other things, fighting for student borrowers. So I will pass it off to Cody.
Hey everyone, this is Cody Hunanian. I am the Executive Director at the Student Debt Crisis Center, and we're a nonprofit with about 2 million supporters across the country fighting to end the student debt crisis. And along that, a really robust education outreach program, just like this. So I'm really happy to be here to talk to y'all today.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sara Buabipsa. I am the West Advocacy Manager for Young Invincibles. We are a national nonprofit organization, and we aim to uplift the voices of young adults in the political process. And student debt is one of our areas of focus. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Sarah. Let's go ahead and get started. First, have a little bit of housekeeping. So this webinar is being recorded. For the duration of this webinar, your microphone, video, and chat has been disabled. But if you do have any questions, please feel free to submit them into the Zoom's Q&A feature. We have a dedicated Q&A section at the end of the webinar. The panelists will also be answering questions during the webinar. So again, please feel free to submit your questions and comments in the Q&A feature, and we will get to them when we can. Also, we will be emailing a recording of the webinar and these slides to everyone who registered after the webinar. And finally, the student loan world is all changing as we continue to go forward. But as of this moment, the information that's presented in this webinar is as accurate as it can be. Things may change afterward, but I just want to put up that disclaimer. And with that, I'd like to say a big welcome and thank you to Senator Monique Limón for helping us put this together. Senator, a couple of welcome remarks from you.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our panelists, to DFPI, and all of those involved in really doing this. I'm Monique Limón. I represent the Central Coast of California, Ventura and Santa Barbara counties. And over the last almost 6 years, I have chaired the Banking and Finance Committee in the state legislature. And we've talked so much and so extensively about student loans and student loan forgiveness and the amount of debt that our constituents have, including many of us who have had debt and understand these loans quite intimately. So I know that this is a big priority for the legislature. We understand that affordability for college and graduate work is very important, but additionally that with our loans and with very big loans, that inhibits our chances or our ability to also make investments in other parts of our economy. And so this is an issue we care deeply about. The legislature has certainly passed different legislation to try to tackle the student loan area. I know that I was a co-author with Assemblymember Mark Stone on the Student Loan Bill of Rights, because we really feel strongly that those that are borrowing should have some rights, some consumer protections to help them navigate the process as borrowers and as individuals who have to think about debt. Debt in our country related to student loan, everyone will tell you, well, this is good debt. However, it's still very big debt. We have over 45 million students in the country with over 1.6 trillion in debt. That is a lot. And so the program that you're going to hear about, again, as has been said, is changing. However, it really is an incredible opportunity to take advantage of. And all of us as legislators are committed to facilitating the process for you to apply for the student loan forgiveness program, which we know will make a very big difference. It may not solve all of your student debt problems, but it will make an impact and a difference. And certainly that's a significant amount of money that can be invested elsewhere. So thank you all for participating, for joining. Never hesitate to reach out to us. And thank you to our panelists that are going to provide a wealth of information on how to facilitate the information that you need so that you can have less debt, which is a goal that we all have. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Limón. A lot of really great information there. Absolutely agree. I'd also like to welcome Assemblymember Cottie Petrie-Norris, who also has some welcome remarks she'd like to share.
Well, thank you so much. Good to see you, Senator Limón. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Assemblywoman Cottie Petrie-Norris, and I represent the 74th Assembly District here in Orange County. Want to just also welcome everyone to today's Student Loan Workshop webinar. Today, we are going to hear some really valuable information and updates on student borrower rights, student loan programs, and the Federal Student Debt Relief Plan. I want to thank all of our co-hosts, the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation, the Campaign for California Borrowers' Rights, and Next Gen Policy. Your partnership in this area of work really is incredibly valued. I think we all recognize that California is confronting a student debt crisis. Here in California, more than 3.5 million student loan borrowers owe more than $140 billion in student loan debt. That makes California the largest monetary amount of any state and puts us as the 13th highest among student loan debt per capita. As Californians, we know that the burden of student debt affects us all and has a direct impact, not just on the lives of individual borrowers, but on our society and on our overall economy as a whole. I am the former chair of the Assembly Select Committee on Student Debt, and I also serve on the Assembly's Banking and Finance Committee. And alongside Senator Limón and our colleague Mark Stone was proud to co-author AB 376, which established the Student Borrower Bill of Rights and ensures that our student loan borrowers are given reliable information, quality customer service, and meaningful access to repayment and forgiveness programs. California will continue to take the lead on addressing the student debt crisis and will continue to fight to protect borrowers' rights. Really, again, grateful for all of our presenters today. One thing that is so important is, I think, for me as an assembly member, to be able to connect my constituents and citizens across the state of California with the resources and programs that are available. And that really is the goal of this webinar, to make sure that everyone who's been able to join us today has all of the resources and the information that you need. And please do not hesitate to reach out to my office if you are a resident of the 74th Assembly District. We really are here to help, whether it's related to student debt questions or anything else. So with that, thank you again to all of our presenters, and really look forward to an informative session today.
Thank you, Assemblymember Petrie-Norris. Fantastic remarks. And we do have one more message from Assemblymember Chris Ward. Let me see if I could get that up really quickly here.
Hello, my name is Chris Ward, and I had the honor of representing the 70th Assembly District in the California State Legislature. And welcome. Thank you for joining this Student Debt District Workshop hosted by the California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation and in partnership with the Campaign for California Borrowers' Rights. There's a lot happening in this space, and we know that you have important questions. It's our hope that this workshop helps you understand some of the basics about student loans and provides you updates on the status of the student loan programs, along with instructions on how to access and apply for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness and Cancellation Program. Thank you again for joining us today, and please feel free to reach out to your state representatives if you have any additional questions after this workshop.
Okay. And so again, I want to say a special thank you to Senator Limón, Senator Min, Assemblymember Petrie-Norris, and Assemblymember Chris Ward for helping us put this fantastic webinar together. A lot of really great information. With that, let's kind of dive right in. Sam, I'd like to.
All right. Thanks again, everyone, for being here. And yes, a lot of big thanks to our elected officials who join us here today, especially Senator Limón and Assemblymember Cottie Petrie-Norris, always wonderful champions that we have in our California legislature. And we, as the Campaign for California Borrowers' Rights, have worked with them in the past, as they mentioned. So just a little bit about who we are, co-hosting this with the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation. We are a leading statewide coalition of students, higher education advocates, and borrower protection organizations working alongside borrowers as well to level the playing field for borrowers in the state of California. The following organizations we lead the campaign together. So that's the Student Borrower Protection Center, Student Debt Crisis Center, who you'll be hearing from Cody today. Next Gen California, that's us. We also do business as Next Gen California. Consumer Reports, and Young Invincibles, you'll be hearing from Sada later on as well. Thanks again, and I will pass it off to Selena.
Thank you, Sam. Before we get into updates and student loan basics, I just want to talk about a little bit about who DFPI is. We are California's Consumer Protection Agency. In 2020, California passed the California Consumer Financial Protection Law, which expanded our authority to oversee previously unregulated providers of financial products. This includes student loan servicers. As the Consumer Protection Agency, we license and examine those companies. We accept and investigate consumer complaints, take legal action when companies are not in compliance, conduct education and outreach such as this one to enhance consumer awareness and to protect consumers from fraud and abuse. Next, please. There were some numbers, you heard some numbers about student loan debt in California, and that's correct. 4 million Californians owe approximately $156 billion in both federal and private student loan debt, with most of that being federal debt. 35 to 49-year-olds owe the most debt on average. The average debt load of a California borrower is $37,000, and student loan debt disproportionately impacts people of color, with Black women carrying the most debt. Prior to COVID-19 pandemic, approximately 500,000 borrowers were behind on paying their loans. And yes, the total student loan debt is nearly $2 trillion, which is the second highest consumer debt category after mortgages. Next, please. You heard a little bit about the Borrower Bill of Rights, and this is, it was introduced as Assembly Bill 376. And thank you to those that helped pass this very, very important legislation for student loan borrowers. The Bill of Rights applies to student loan servicers doing business in California, including state licensed servicers, as well as banks doing servicers. And it applies to borrowers with federal and private loans, which is different than those protections offered on the federal level, which are very limited. So what does it do? As previously mentioned, it prohibits servicers from engaging in abusive, unfair, or deceptive practices, which has been happening for the past 20 years. It requires that servicers work in the best interest of others and of borrowers and provide accurate information. This means that when a borrower calls their student loan servicer to obtain information on their payment, on their account, on payment plans, on forgiveness options, they should be provided accurate information. They should try to help the borrower avoid delinquency and default. The Student Borrower Bill of Rights also establishes special protections for military borrowers, borrowers working in public service, older borrowers, and those with disabilities. I think it's very important to mention right now with all the changes and the programs that are being offered, one provision of the Bill of Rights is that the servicer has to respond to a borrower's qualified written request or inquiry within 30 days. So if you email or you call and you request your account history or account information, they have to respond to you within 30 days. If not, you're able to file a complaint. Additionally, if you file a complaint through DFPI, through our agency, they have to respond in writing within 15 days. So I think right now it's very important, especially when people are trying to obtain their history, PSLF counts, all that information in writing. So borrowers do have that special provision in the Bill of Rights. And it also established my position, which was created to help borrowers to navigate student loans, to understand their rights and options, to do outreach such as this one, and to work with state and federal agencies and stakeholders, organizations such as this one, to help serve borrowers in the best way. Next, please. And I will pass it over to Cody.
Great, thank you so much, Selena. And we at Student Debt Crisis Center are proud to have been part of some of these efforts to create stronger consumer protections for student loan borrowers. This part of the presentation today is really going to get into some of the basics, not only around our student loans, which I think is the foundation of everything we need to talk about, but also a lot of the updates and policies that you're probably hearing about. So let's start with our foundation here, which is just a quick primer on student loan basics. So many of us, most of us, in fact, have what are called federal student loans. And federal student loans are the type of student loan that you get from the government after you filled out a FAFSA form, the form that you submit to the federal government to receive financial aid. Now, there's a suite of different federal loans that exist out here, and we've got them listed. There are direct loans, and these can be both subsidized or unsubsidized. A direct loan means that the money that was awarded to you comes directly from the government. And really, anyone who's gotten a federal student loan since 2010 should have just direct loans. Subsidized means that the government pays a portion of the interest that could accrue on your student loan, and unsubsidized does not have that benefit. So interest begins to accrue immediately. There are also direct plus loans. And these are loans that have fixed interest rates, they're unsubsidized, and there are some origination fees. And these are different than the standard direct loan because a credit check is required here. And the reason that is because plus loans are for graduate students who are typically of older age and parents. So they're called direct graduate plus loans and direct parent plus loans. And then we have here another federal loan, direct consolidation loan. And that a consolidation is when you combine eligible federal student loans into a single loan with a single loan servicer, one interest rate, and ideally one student loan payment. There is no cost to do this, and many borrowers do consolidate. What it essentially means is that all of your old loans are put together into one new loan with one single payment. And at the bottom of this list here, we have FFEL loans and Perkins loans. FFEL loans are also federal student loans, but they come from an older program in which the government partnered with private banks. And so some FFEL loans are not eligible for certain federal programs because a bank still holds them. And Perkins loans are an older type of loan that was issued through universities and campuses and institutions directly. Next slide, please. And then there's a whole other bucket of student loans, which we call private student loans. And these are the types of student loans that you access by going to a bank or a financial institution, or perhaps one of these new private lenders like a SoFi or an Earnest or something like that. Private loans are not funded and are definitely not subsidized by the federal government. These are, again, from private lenders. And because of that, they do not offer the flexible repayment plans and loan forgiveness programs that the federal government provides to federal student loans. Private loans, because they're offered through traditional banking institutions, typically require a credit check. And because many students are young, it often means that a cosigner is also attached to these loans. So parents, grandparents, family, friends, these can all be people who also owe this debt because they co-sign for their loved one. Some federal student loan borrowers choose to refinance their federal student loan into a private student loan to get a better interest rate if they can. But what that means is that you lose access to all of the federal programs that exist and you can't ever go back. So that's an important detail to underline there. Next slide, please. So we want to just list a few names of student loan servicing companies. And the servicer is the company that mails you your bills, collects payments, helps you enroll in programs. They're kind of the liaison that you will be most in contact with and most familiar with. On the left here, we have federal loan servicers, Mokila, Nelnet. Navient is probably the biggest name. They're no longer servicing federal student loans as of this year, but it's still there. So because many people still remember that as their loan servicer. If you had Navient today, you likely have Aid Vantage as your loan servicer, Great Lakes as well. And on the right here are these private servicers. We have a list of banks, Wells Fargo, Discover, SoFi, and also some federal servicers like Navient once was, service both federal loans and private student loans. Next slide. All right, so that's the basics. And now that we know the difference between a federal loan and a private loan, let's discuss all the updates that are impacting people with federal student loans today. So if you have a federal student loan, you may have had your student loan payments paused during the pandemic. And that's because Congress passed the CARES Act in March of 2020 that paused federal student loan payments for those student loans that are held by the government. And that includes all direct loans and some FFEL and some Perkins loans that are held by the government. The CARES Act benefits were extended by the previous president and the current president. And right now, payments will remain on pause for these loans through the end of this year, with payments set to restart on January 1st. On top of that, interest was set at 0%. So there has not been any interest accruing while payments have been put on pause. Now, as one more reminder, I have to just reiterate it, borrowers should be prepared that payments will resume on January 2023 if the president does not extend this again. Now, another update is what we're calling the one-time account adjustment for income-driven repayment plans. An income-driven repayment plan is a federal program that allows you to lower your monthly payments based on your income, which can be really affordable for people who are struggling. The problem is, over the years, student loan borrowers would contact their student loan servicer, and instead of being put in one of these programs, they'd be pushed into a forbearance or a deferment. And a forbearance and a deferment is a temporary pause on your account that really is best intended for emergency scenarios, not long-term struggles. And so what the Department of Education has realized is that there are millions of people out there who should be closer to student loan forgiveness through several different programs that are further away from that because they were steered into forbearance instead of put into the program that would have been best for them. So what the federal government is doing is they are going to go back and they're going to find people who were put into forbearance for 12 or more months consecutively, or 36 or more months cumulatively. And they are going to recalculate, readjust your account to show that your account has made more payments towards forgiveness, either through completing IDR or through public service loan forgiveness. So let me just share two examples. One, someone who's enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan should be eligible to have their student loans forgiven after 20 or 25 years, depending on which program they're enrolled in. But you could be many years further away from that because you were put into forbearance. The Department of Education is going to go and say that time you're in forbearance actually counts. Similarly, the public service loan forgiveness program allows public service workers to have their loans erased after they've completed 120 monthly payments. Now, if you're put in forbearance, those payments wouldn't count. So again, the Department of Education is going to go back. They're going to add more of those payments to your total. Next slide, please. Now, I think this is Selena's section. Are you you're discussing PSLF? Selena, sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Almost stepped on your toes here. I get really excited about this topic.
I know. Thanks. Thanks, Cody, for all that great information. So as Cody mentioned, we have these two programs that are going on. PSLF is one that you've probably heard a lot about. You've heard about the waiver. So I'm going to explain this to you now. PSLF is a program that was created in 2007 to encourage individuals to enter and remain in public service where they may earn less than those in private service. Under the program, student loan forgiveness is granted after satisfying certain criteria for 10 years. So what are these requirements? I'm going to talk about the normal requirements. So these are outside of the waiver pre-October 2021, and then the requirements after October 31st, 2022. A borrower must have the right type of loans. So they have to have those direct loans that Cody was talking about, direct loans that are not in default. You have to be under the right type of repayment plan. An income-driven repayment plan is ideally the best for PSLF to get the most benefit. You have to have the right type of employment or qualifying employer. So a qualifying employer includes a federal, state, local, or tribal government organization, agency, or entity, a public or family service agency, or a tribal college or university, and it includes public health and public interest legal services. Military service is also a qualifying employer. A 501c3, a private nonprofit organization that is not a labor union, not a partisan political organization, and provides a public service. Those are your qualifying employers. You have to be working full-time. The definition of full-time is 30 or more hours a week, or whatever the employer considers full-time. You can have two part-time qualifying employers to accumulate or to reach the 30 hours a week. You would just have to fill out two different forms. And then you have to have the right number of qualifying payments. Those are 120 payments on time in full. They don't have to be consecutive. You have to have these things going on at the same time. And these are for any payments made after 2007, which is when the program was created. Next, please. So due to some of the issues that Cody mentioned with the servicers and mismanagement of the programs, last year, the Department of Education created this limited PSLF waiver. In 2007, when the first batch of borrowers applied, there was a 99% denial rate for not meeting those requirements. Again, not due to any borrower error. So what they did was they suspended most of the PSLF qualifying rules through the end of this month, October 31st. Borrowers should apply even if they were denied before or do not have the 120 qualifying payments. Approximately 130,000 borrowers, probably more at this point, have received cancellation since its announcement, relative to fewer than the 20,000 before the waiver. Next, please. So I'm going to talk about the PSLF waiver requirements and what is the difference between the normal and waiver requirements. So as I mentioned, under the PSLF waiver, you have to have a direct loan. For those borrowers with those that are carrying those older FFEL, Perkins loans, they're not going to qualify under normal requirements. Therefore, during the waiver period, a borrower that has those type of loans is able to consolidate those loans into direct loans while receiving credit for previous payments made on those loans. Okay, so traditionally, if you consolidate your loans into direct loans, you would start your count at 0. During this waiver period, you will receive credit. So this right here is going to benefit those borrowers that have been in public service for 10, 15, 20 years, that have been making payments on these FFEL, Perkins loans, or maybe you have a mix of direct, FFEL, and Perkins loans, but may only currently be receiving credit on the direct loans. So a borrower does have to consolidate to benefit under the waiver. Parent plus loans are not included unless consolidated. So parent plus loans on their own, if consolidated during the waiver and outside of the waiver, have to start at 0. But if a borrower has their own student loans, they have maybe a FFEL loan, direct loan, and then parent plus loans are able to consolidate to get benefit under the waiver. So I get that question a lot. So parent plus loans can only benefit if the parent has their own student loans. One more thing is, if a borrower is taking advantage of the waiver and consolidating their FFEL and direct loans, they, under new guidance for the Biden relief, they will not be eligible for the Biden relief, the 10 to 20,000 that Cody will be talking about. And that's a completely separate program. So something important for borrowers to understand. The employment qualification has not changed. The only difference during the waiver is that a borrower does not need to be in the qualifying employment at the time of forgiveness. This right here benefits borrowers who worked for 10 years and maybe moved on, or who retired and worked for a long period of time and is still carrying those FFEL, Perkins, older loans. The qualifying payment requirement, this is what's very important. Again, this goes hand in hand with what Cody was talking about with the IDR adjustment. So any past periods of repayment, whether or not you made that payment on time for the full amount due or on a qualifying repayment plan, will count. With the IDR adjustment, certain periods of forbearance and deferment may count. So they're going to go back and make that adjustment, therefore giving borrowers even more credit. Also, all these months during COVID forbearance, all these months count towards PSLF. So that's about 30 months of credit, as long as you were in the qualifying employer and you can certify your employment. So these are very important changes that will help borrowers. Again, those borrowers with those older loans have that have been working in the qualified employer for longer periods of time and are still carrying these loans. Next, please. So what do you need to do to find out if you qualify? Well, first of all, is your employer a qualified public service employer? The Department of Education has an employer eligibility search tool where you can search up employers with the employer's federal employee ID number. That's going to be very important. You're going to need that for the application to complete the PSLF help tool. If you don't know your employer's FEIN, you can Google it. It's on your W-2 form as well. Any state of California employees, they all have the same FEIN, but you can go on there and you don't have to even create an account. You can just use the FEIN, punch in some dates, and then it will tell you if the employer is eligible. It may not come up, or it may say it's ineligible. That doesn't mean that they don't qualify. It may only mean that no one from that agency has applied for PSLF yet. So if you think the employer meets the requirements, then you can go ahead and apply. Very important to know for any of these programs is, what loans do you have? I get questions every day asking, do I qualify? Well, I can't help anyone. We can't help anyone. You're not going to be able to really understand what action to take if you don't know what loans you have. You can log into your studentaid.gov account. You create an account there. If you are new to the system, it will take a few days, 2 or 3 days, for them to authenticate your account. You will not be able to access your loan information, any of these tools, until it gets authenticated. So if you don't have one, it's best to create one ASAP. There you can download all your information. You'll see all your loans, even ones that have been paid off, that have been consolidated. When you download that information, you will see the word direct, FEL, Perkins. That's how you know what type of loans you have. You will see direct consolidated, unsubsidized, subsidized. You will get all that information there. You can also see grant information there, which is very important for borrowers looking into the other relief. And then you will need to consolidate your loans if necessary. Again, it's those borrowers with those FEL, Perkins loans, and other older loans, mix of loans, that will benefit the most from this. And they do have to consolidate those loans into direct loans. Now, October 31st is on Monday. I know there's not a lot of time. At this point, what borrowers need to do is they need to, in order to qualify under the waiver, you need to start the PSLF help tool, generate the PSLF application there. You fill it out, you will download it and print it, and then provide it to your employer. The signature does not need to be submitted by the 31st. You just need to use the tool to generate the application, and Department of Education will have record of it. If you need to consolidate, you complete the consolidation process on studentaid.gov. You will not hear back from anyone for a few weeks, probably more than a month now. But as long as the consolidation was done before October 31st on the studentaid.gov site, you will benefit under the waiver. So they are giving borrowers that chance to, they're going to record everything and still be crediting them. So you may not receive an answer on consolidation or your PSLF count for months at this time. But if you do want to benefit from these, it's very important that you take these steps. Next, please. And just very important, after the 31st, the program will continue. We're going back to normal requirements for those that have newer loans, maybe just started in the qualifying employer. Very important, just so don't freak out about it. This is what the PSLF application looks like. There is an option to mail the application. If you're not able to access studentaid.gov, or for some reason you can't, it's highly recommended. But if you do decide to mail an application, it has to be dated before October 31st. This is what it looks like. You'll see you need the FEIN number. Very important. Just make sure that it's clear, legible. Don't just write in a year. Don't let the employer just write 2017, 2016 for a date. Make sure that the dates are complete. And follow the instructions, please. Very important. You don't want to risk any denials or delays more than there already are because of a date or a check mark. They're just being very picky about it. So again, you do have to have a wet or drawn signature. You cannot have an electronic signature. That's why this needs to be printed out. And then it's going to get submitted to Mohila, who is the new PSLF servicer or the one processing all the applications now. You may not hear from them for a bit, but as long as you use the PSLF tool, you should be good. Just make sure you document all your information, keep all your dates. There will be a reconsideration appeal process. It's there already, but they're probably not going to look into it until all these changes, adjustments go through. So very important. There is a deadline of October 31st. This is, the program will continue after the 31st, and this is different than the program that we will be talking about now. And I think back to Cody.
All right, so I know there's a lot of updates to share. The one that's the most visible and it has the most people talking is the debt cancellation plan announced by the Biden-Harris administration. And so I'm going to go through this quickly because I think it's a pretty basic concept. But a borrower who earns less than $125,000 per year, or a married couple that earns under $250,000 per year, is eligible for up to $20,000 in student debt cancellation under this plan. And the way it works is if you received a Pell Grant to attend college, you're eligible for the maximum, which is the $20,000 total. If you did not receive a Pell Grant to pay for college, then you can receive up to $10,000 in debt cancellation. And right now there is an application available. It's at studentaid.gov, and it takes just minutes. I'm going to get into that in just one second. But before I do, I just want to say the plan also announced two other important things. One, that the president intends to restart payments on January 1st, as I mentioned earlier. And two, that they're going to introduce a new income-driven repayment plan that was actually more generous, so has lower payments than any of the income-driven repayment plans to date. And it really addresses the problem of growing interest where borrowers see their loan balances increase over time. So this plan is actually packed full of a lot of really important relief for borrowers. Next slide. So I mentioned the application is live. It has been live for a little over a week now. And the White House says that 22 million people have already applied. And again, that this application is available to anyone who qualifies. It's at studentaid.gov. Next slide. Now here's the full link. You can get directly to the application using www.studentaid.gov/debt-relief/application. Now, anyone who applies before November 15th is, according to the Department of Education, supposed to receive student debt cancellation before the end of this year. But the application is going to be available to everyone until December 31st of next year. So you have over a year to apply for this benefit. As I said, the application takes less than 5 minutes. It's online. You can do it on your mobile device. And right now it exists in both English and Spanish forms. We do know that a paper application is on the way. So I'm hearing from folks, particularly those with certain disabilities or who have challenge accessing stable internet, that the online application is difficult for them, and paper application is coming soon. Next slide. So here's why it's simple. You just need to share with the Department of Education your name, your social security number, your date of birth, some contact information, and you need to just self-attest, meaning you check a checkbox verifying your income information. And I just want to be clear, none of this information is information the department doesn't already have on you. So it's not about collecting information. This is just about being able to pair your application with your student loan account. After you apply, you will immediately receive a confirmation email. And some borrowers, only some, will get an email in the future from the Department of Education asking for additional income information. Not everyone will, but we want you to be keeping an eye out for emails from the Department of Education application, these are emails that come from an email ending in .gov. Once your application is processed, which could take 4 to 6 weeks once the process begins, you will be notified and servicers will start to apply cancellation on your loan. And I just want to be clear, right now you can apply. There has been a pause on actually processing applications due to a court order, but that should not slow you down from applying. You can get your application in, and once the process begins, it'll be 4 to 6 weeks. Next slide, please. So here's who's eligible. Anyone with a direct loan that had a direct loan before June 30th of this year. And that includes all the federal direct loans we talked about earlier, subsidized, unsubsidized, plus loans, and consolidation loans. Now, I mentioned there were FFEL loans and Perkins loans where some were held by the government and some were held by private banks. If you have the kind that was held by the federal government, you also are eligible for this relief. Now, a simple way to know this is if your payments were automatically on pause during the pandemic, you have a loan that qualifies. And then lastly, any defaulted loan. Once you default on your student loans, the Department of Education services these for debt collection purposes, and you now fall under the umbrella of the people who qualify for debt cancellation. Now, at the bottom here, we have in red a quick note. As of 9/29, September 29, privately owned FFEL and Perkins loans, those are the ones that are held by private banks, not the government, are no longer eligible for debt relief under this plan. Before 9/29, we were telling borrowers to consolidate to become eligible. Now there is, at least as we speak today, there is no path for a borrower with one of these loans who is not already consolidated to access this relief. Next slide. Okay, so that's it for my section. I'm going to pass it to Sarah to wrap us up here.
Yes, thank you, Cody. So I'm just going to briefly go over some tips for everyone on how you can protect yourself against scams. So while the federal government has implemented measures to help borrowers, unfortunately, it has resulted in an increased an amount of fraudulent activity and has opened the door for scammers. So we want borrowers to be aware so that they don't fall victim to fraud. We see that scammers are reaching borrowers by phone, email, and mail with official looking logos. Just a reminder, the Department of Education is not calling anyone directly, and no one should be asking you to pay for access to forgiveness. If you receive any information about quick loan forgiveness and increasing a sense of urgency around your access to loan forgiveness, you must research the company and be very careful and tread lightly. Again, when Cody was reviewing the application for debt relief, he mentioned that some of the information you have to provide is very sensitive, like your social security information. Again, just be careful. You should only be providing that information when you're applying on websites like studentaid.gov/debt-relief/reply. And next slide. So if you run into trouble with your loans, or you're getting a constant barrage of scams, or you have broader loans, let's say contacting your servicer, these are some entities that you can file complaints with. That is the Federal Student Aid, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation. Filing complaints is helpful, especially in assisting these agencies in identifying patterns that they can then use to advocate for stronger protections and make broad changes. Again, just please protect yourself. Don't provide any unnecessary identifiable information to any caller, any email that is not, that you have not done research on and have identified to be from the federal government, from studentaid.gov. And again, never provide your FSA ID and username to any callers that you, any calls that you receive. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. A lot of really great information, and there were a lot of great questions that were submitted to us. If you do have a question, please, we're at the Q&A session. Please feel free to submit it into the Zoom's Q&A feature. I believe Sam is going to help us moderate the Q&A session.
Yeah, all right. Thanks for everyone again for being here. Keep dropping those questions in the chat. We'll try to get through as many as we can. But I see a number of questions around kind of the latest lawsuit, that multi-state lawsuit around Biden's announcement around debt cancellation. Let's see, Cody or Selena, what can we share with folks at this point regarding the status of that lawsuit?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll share, I think, some broad statements about where we stand here. First and foremost, which I think is important for everyone on the call, the legal experts that have worked on student debt cancellation for years have spent a lot of time crafting what is an obvious legal authority for the president to be able to do this. So we are very confident the president's policy is legal. Now, in our system in America, you can always bring litigation to try to challenge these policies, and that's where we're at. We've seen a series of lawsuits filed against debt cancellation. A few have already been dismissed, and we anticipate these all will be. The one that's getting the most traction right now is a lawsuit filed by Mohila, ironically, a federal student loan servicer who's supposed to be helping us with our student loans, and they are backed by several state attorneys generals. On Friday, earlier last week, it was announced that the judge in that case was dismissing the case. On Friday, they appealed, which is totally a normal process. They appealed that decision, and a stay was issued. And a stay just means that the process, that the court is asking for no debt to be discharged yet while they complete this appeals process. So all of this is, I just bring this up to say, all of this is part of the normal legal process, and we are still encouraging people to go apply, to not hesitate and not be deterred by what is just a normal part of the legal proceedings. Later this week, we will have more updates to share once this process is completed.
Absolutely. Thanks, Cody. Yeah, we want to make sure folks hear us pretty loud and clear. Please go ahead and apply for debt cancellation. And we will continue giving updates as they come out. Next question here. Oh my gosh, hopefully I'm not mispronouncing your name, but Enelix works for a school district on the Central Coast. Are they already eligible for the forgiveness program, or do they need to be in a specific position within that public organization in order to be eligible? So I think this is around PSLF. We get this a lot. So do people need to have a specific title in order to qualify for PSLF?
No, they don't. You can be any position as long as the employer is qualified.
Great. And then going back to the debt cancellation topic, some folks are asking, when they do forgive these loans through the broad-based debt cancellation announcement, is there an order to how that debt cancellation is going to be happening, or what can folks expect to see on their account when debt cancellation actually starts happening?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, a borrower with a very simple situation will likely, just find themselves having a single student loan reduced by $10,000 or $20,000. Those that have kind of more complicated scenarios in which they have multiple federal student loans would have this debt discharged in a particular way. I will share in the chat here the website, that the studentaid.gov site, where they explain how they will distribute this type of relief. And I'll put that in the chat here, but just for those that are listening, it's studentaid.gov/manage-loans/forgiveness-cancellation, and finally debt-relief-info. So I'll put that in there. You can also search for this in the Department of Education if you type in one-time federal student loan relief, and they explain how they'll be distributing relief to borrowers.
All
and
right.
I'm sharing this link is it can be quite complicated. There's like a hierarchy of different scenarios in which they'll address the debt to.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Cody. And then we've gotten a couple questions throughout today's webinar around, I think, from students. So if they're planning on applying for PSLF, and they happen to work at, a nonprofit or some public government institution while they were a student, does that time working in those positions as a student count towards PSLF?
While they were, as long as they were a paid employee, then they will qualify. So they were working, getting paid by that qualified employer, and they were in repayment status. Hope that answers the question.
Oh, and also working full-time.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think being in that repayment status is the key there. So
Yes.
depending on where you are, make sure that that's part of your plans. I think after you have left being a student and are in repayment.
Right, out of grace period, yes. Outside of the grace period in repayment, correct.
All right. And then Cody, we have a question here about direct parent plus loans. So if this person, they're asking how can they transfer the loans over to their name if their parents took out this parent plus loan, and if they do so and refinance those loans, will it restart the qualifying monthly payments?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. So if you have a direct parent plus loan, the parent themselves is the person who owns and holds that loan. And I know that many families, they'll have maybe like personal agreements where a parent takes out a parent plus loan and they speak to their child, and the intention is that their child will pay off that debt on their behalf. But there's no like formal mechanism from which to transfer that debt to another borrower. So a parent plus loan, in that scenario, again, the parent themselves is both responsible for making payments, is the person that you look to when you need to find out if they qualify for public service loan forgiveness. And similarly for the debt cancellation plan, it's the parent's income information that will be used. So for all intents and purposes, it should just be treated as a parent's individual loan, completely separate from the student whose education it was intended for. And yeah, there is no real way to transfer it over to the student within the federal student loan system.
Got it. And maybe a quick follow-up on that topic, just to clarify again. So if someone has the Parent Plus loan, do they qualify for that broad-based student debt cancellation separately from their child's loan?
Yeah, they do. And, we're hearing from families where children and parents are all eligible for debt cancellation. So it just goes to show you how powerful this policy really is, not just for individuals, but for entire families.
Absolutely. Okay, I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions, but let's go to, is Mohila the only loan servicer who processes PSLF? And I think we get this question a couple of times too here. Can you switch or choose your student loan servicer?
No, Mohila is the PSLF servicer. And if you have to consolidate your loans, you will be asked about it. You will be asked to choose to pick a servicer. If you are enrolling in PSLF, then it's going to be Mohila. If you don't have to consolidate and you're just submitting your PSLF application, it's going to be mailed, faxed, uploaded to Mohila. So you do not have the option of choosing a servicer.
There we go. So Mohila is the one to look out for PSLF. And I'll pass it back to you, Ku, so we can get the last few pieces of information out here. Thanks, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you, Sam, for helping moderate the Q&A. I know there's a lot of questions. We didn't get to all of them. We just don't have the time. But thank you again for submitting your questions. Really quickly, there are some important student loan reminders. Number one, again, we've talked about this before, but can't say it enough. The public service loan forgiveness waiver deadline is at the end of this month, October 31st. Make sure you complete that help tool and get your loans consolidated if it applies to you. Also, student loan repayment, the student loan payments start back up in January next year. So that means that you want to make sure to update your contact information in your studentaid.gov account. Also, if you are in default, make sure to stay updated with the Fresh Start program. We've linked it in the slide here. And be sure to subscribe to the DFPI. We have a monthly newsletter which we send out updates and alerts, not just including student loan information, but upcoming webinars, upcoming events, and also news and consumer alerts and everything like that. So please subscribe to us. Finally, we wanted to share the list of student borrower resources. At the top there is a resource webpage that the DFPI has put together. A lot of great resources for student loan borrowers, a list of the webinars we have, including upcoming events, and also a list of nonprofit, government agency, and legal aid groups that provide assistance to student borrowers. There's a link to our YouTube channel where we publish all of our webinars and other video content. And I don't know, Selena, if you want to talk about these additional links right below.
These are just links from studentaid.gov regarding everything we spoke about today. These are your go-to links. Okay, student aid login. This is where you're going to obtain your loan information. This is where you're going to obtain Pell Grant information. PSLF normal requirements. So if you don't benefit under the waiver, or you don't need to rush for the 31st, these are your requirements, the waiver requirements, and then the one-time student debt relief information. They all have really good FAQs and the applications as well.
Okay, great. And also there is an email for Selena Damian, who is the DFPI student loan ombudsperson. She's receiving a lot of emails. You're welcome to email her. She may not get back to you quickly, only because we've been so inundated with so much questions, but she's getting to as many as she can. And finally, again, I want to thank Senator Limón, Senator Min, Assemblymember Petrie-Norris, and Assemblymember Ward for helping us put together this webinar. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming to join us. Thank you to the panelists. You've been great helping present all this information. And please take care of yourself and each other.